A high-ranking Vatican prelate has accused Pope Francis of staging a hostile takeover of the Catholic Church with his latest synod. Unfortunately, a lot of what the pontiff has said and done during his papacy is causing more and more of his flock to seriously ask whether the Pope is truly Catholic. Let's take a look. Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Terrell, senior editor for the New American Magazine, sitting in for Gary Benoit for this edition of Beyond the Cover. With me today is another senior editor of the magazine, whom I have for years looked up to for his investigative prowess, Bill Jasper. It's nice to be speaking with you today, as always.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's a pleasure to be on with you, and it's always a pleasure to be on with Gary Benoit for Beyond the Cover, but it's so nice to have you here today, and let me just say, too, thank you for coming on to the staff full-time. It's wonderful to have you now as a senior editor, and we appreciate all you're doing.
That is very kind of you, and I think you'll agree with me when I say that Gary is on a very well-deserved vacation right now, so that's why we get the pleasure of speaking with each other. Well, you have written a very interesting article, Faithful Catholics Are Resisting Pope Francis's Globalism and Subversion. It's a pretty damning statement to make about a reigning pontiff, but the criticism is coming not just from fringe traditionalists, but from mainstream clergy and laity. What's going on over there at the Vatican?
Well, it's a very disturbing trend that's been happening, and it's actually been growing throughout the pontificate of Pope Francis. He began early on by making many statements to the press and to various groups and organizations or on his travels, where he'd make off-the-cuff statements that were rather jarring, seeming to be contradicting Catholic teaching, even heretical. And so statements about hell, statements about traditional liturgy, statements about traditional families and large families. And what has come to pass, though, recently are some very damning things that we see happening in the church with his blessing, and that is concerning Catholic doctrine on homosexual blessings, homosexual marriages, homosexual unions. The process that he has set in motion, called his Synod and Synodality, which is really, having been a correspondent at the United Nations for many years, it looks very similar to what we have seen going on at the United Nations, where you bring together a whole bunch of different groups, NGOs, whatnot, and you claim that you're representing all of the different stakeholders, the interests of the peoples of the world, and you're going to come to some kind of understanding with all of these people, and you're going to then have guidance from that. We see that happening with the Synod and Synodality, where the Pope has started this process where there is this democratic process going on all around the world, where the bishops of the world are supposed to be taking input from all these various different groups, even non-Catholics or anti-Catholics, and we're going to bring this all together and have some kind of new doctrine by democracy or mobocracy. It's very similar to what we see usually happening at the United Nations and the just concluded summit on biodiversity in Montreal, and the one last month on the climate change in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. And what has particularly caused a lot of Catholics, caused a lot of them to call into question what's going on and to actually become resistant, is some of his actions that he's taken with regard to the issue of pro-life and abortion. And we can jump into that if you like.
Yes, I do want to talk about that because that's made some big waves this week. First, before we address that, though, I think it's important for us to take a moment to address the topic of papal infallibility, because a lot of non-Catholics have a completely erroneous understanding of that dogma. And sad to say, many Catholics can't do a good job of explaining it either. You, of course, are not among that number, but could you take a minute to explain why questioning the Pope in these areas that you're talking about is not a violation of papal infallibility or showing any disrespect to the Petrine office?
Right. So you're right that even many Catholics misunderstand this. Not every word uttered by the Pope is infallible, and infallibility does not, it needs to be distinguished from impeccability. In other words, the Pope is a sinner like all men. And so the fact that he has not pristine pure in one area of his life or another does not affect the function of papal infallibility. The papal infallibility is a guarantee given by God through the Holy Ghost that the Pope, when he, in certain circumstances, that is, when he's teaching to the whole church using his papal office, speaking ex cathedra, on issues of faith or morals, that he will be protected from error so that the faithful will know what they need to believe to be saved. And when he speaks off the cuff, or even in an encyclical or some other written conveyance on some issue, whether it's on climate change, as Pope Francis has done, or on refugees, or many of the trendy issues that he likes to jump on, those do not carry the mark of papal infallibility. The last ex cathedra statement from a pope, which carried the mark of infallibility, was 1950 by Pope Pius XII. And so there have been many church documents and papal expressions and motu proprios issued since then, but they do not carry that dogmatic stamp.
Right. Is it fair to say that most popes don't even invoke the dogma, the papal infallibility?
Right. So we did not see that with Pope John Paul, okay, or with Pope John the 23rd or Pope Paul VI, who was the reigning pope at the end of Vatican II, where many of these things were launched, and none of them invoked papal infallibility. And Pope Paul VI specifically said that Vatican II, which brought in much of the revolution into the church, specifically said that it was not a dogmatic doctrinal.
Right. So let's bring that back to the current day. And now Pope Francis has supposedly laicized Father Frank Pavone. He is familiar to those in the pro-life movement because he's been fighting on the front lines for decades, not just for the unborn, but also for healing and hope for women who regret their past abortions. Now, I know you've met Father Pavone on a number of occasions, and what can you say about this situation?
Well, again, this is the article that I wrote on the faithful Catholics' resistance to the Pope preceded this latest scandal. And so we know that there are plenty of cases within the church where we have priests, bishops, in the case of Cardinal McCarrick and others, even cardinals within the church, who have been involved in homosexual, pedophile, or various adulterous relations. And Father Pavone is not one of those. Many of them, most of them, have not been given the same kind of disciplinary treatment that he has. Father Pavone is the founder of Priests for Life. And so he has, for 30 years or more, been totally involved in protecting the right to life of the unborn. And he's been totally committed to that. And so I've been blessed to be with him on Walks for Life and other events around the country, pro-life events. So he, just a week ago, was not just disciplined or rebuked or anything, he was laicized. The Pope, through the dicastery for the clergy, issued him a command that he could no longer call himself Father Pavone, couldn't wear a cassock, couldn't celebrate the Mass, hear confessions, perform any of the sacraments, that he was no longer a priest. What did he do? Well, the only offenses that they have listed is that he supposedly committed blasphemy. And this was in a tweet going clear back to 2016, I believe, or 2017, where he used G damn, referring to Joe Biden. And he says that was wrong. That was sin. He confessed it, and it was a moment of anger, and he shouldn't have done it, but he did it. And the other was, they said that he put an aborted fetus on an altar, and this was a sacrilege. Well, he didn't. It was a table, looked like an altar, but he was doing this to tell people, look, we need to protect these babies. They have immortal souls. These are babies that are being slaughtered, and we need to get politicians in office who will pass laws to protect them. And so these two offenses, when you look at all of the priests and clergy who are running around promoting LGBTQ lifestyles in gay pride parades, hooking up on Grindr, going to gay bars, etc., who are not disciplined, who are not brought under control, who are not laicized. And in fact, many of them are promoted, like Father James Martin, S.J., who is one of the Pope's buddies. And he's one of the biggest promoters of pride celebrations, LGBTQ. He gets promoted within the Vatican. So there's obviously something very, very wrong here. And the Father Pavone situation with Priests for Life connects very closely with another part of the article that I focused on, and that is the Pontifical Academy for Life. And so maybe we could go into that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, please do that. And I also want you to make some links between what's going on in the Vatican and what's going on in the UN and the World Economic Forum, because they all seem to be hook, line, and sinker forwarding the same agenda. And then what's the good Catholic supposed to do? You know, when the shepherd is struck, the sheep scatter. What? So anyway, I'm piling you with questions suddenly. So please.
Well, no, very, very good question, because I'll tackle the second part first. What we have seen in this pontificate of Francis Bergoglio is that he has aligned himself with the globalists and the communists in an auto-demolition of the church. He's fully in sync with the globalists of the World Economic Forum, who are calling for this great reset that we've covered extensively in the New American Magazine. And in fact, he has sent Cardinal Turkson as his emissary to speak at the World Economic Forum, and he has appeared himself virtually to congratulate Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum on all of the great things that they are doing. Now, they are pushing for a complete reset, remaking of the world politically, economically, morally, socially, biologically, environmentally. It's a megalomaniacal effort on the part of these uber-rich globalists who want to make the world in their image. And, you know, the Christian is supposed to be not worldly seeking, worldly attention and worldly approval, but Pope Francis obviously is. And in fact, he's gone so far as to appoint many of the World Economic Forum experts to his various advisory boards. For instance, Jeffrey Sachs, one of the most famous or infamous of the globalist academics, an acolyte of George Soros at Columbia University, and he's one of the men who designed the Sustainable Development Goals project for the United Nations. He has been appointed by Pope Francis to his Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. When it comes to, though, the Pontifical Academy for Life, which was founded by Pope John Paul II, specifically to be an organized effort to bring together academics and scientists and medical people to promote the culture of life and to protect the unborn. He has been dismantling that. He appointed one of his most notorious appointments to that is Mariana Mazzucato, professor of economics. She's a globalist at the World Economic Forum. She's an atheist, a militant atheist, militant pro-abortion, pro-euthanasia, completely opposed to what the Pontifical Academy of Life is for. So why would one bring a vampire into the blood bank? You know, and she's not the only one. In my article, I go through more than half a dozen of them, including the man who he put in charge as president of the Pontifical Academy for Life, and that's Vincenzo Paglia, bishop, who is notorious for promoting homosexuality. So these are very disturbing things. What does this signify? Dr. Taylor Marshall, author who has written a book, Infiltration, cites these things as obvious confirmations of the thesis of his book that the Catholic Church has been thoroughly infiltrated over the years, over the decades. And of course, that's something that we've written about for many years as well.
Yes, and I think that our Lord warned us about this in a parable that ended with the moral, an enemy hath done this, you know, by the...
Right, we have wolves in sheep's clothing with miters and who are decimating the flock.
But the good news is the gates of hell will not prevail. So I do encourage we're running out of time right now. I wish that we could go on. I think we could go on for several hours about all of this intrigue, but I do encourage everyone to read your article and follow this subject, because it is going to be very crucial, very important as our lives unfold. Bill, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Rebecca. Always a pleasure.
Sophia paused before the door. It read, Department of Bidigital Convergence. Just inside was a new world, a better world, the one of everlasting life, of no pain, of no loss, of no problem. She entered the chamber and her surroundings changed. She saw around her an infinite field of waving golden grain surmounted by cloudless blue sky. The AI voice whispered gently in her mind, Welcome to the Singularity. She couldn't see it and couldn't feel it, but her body had almost instantly been covered by a swarm of tiny gray multi-legged bots that melted through her clothes and into her skin. Not perceiving the nightmare, her eyes had already been consumed and the rest of her body was dissolving as the bots digested her flesh. She felt only a warmth suffusing her being. Drowsy, she drifted to sleep, and her last thought was one of panic. Would she ever wake? Could a nightmare vision like this be an outcome of the much-hyped transhumanist technological singularity? Enter the world of the future as illuminated by the experience of the past in Endgame, the new book by Dennis Barrett, the publisher of the New American Magazine, and find out how the disastrous COVID pandemic response fits with the technocratic elite's thirst to create a transhumanist utopia. Get Endgame from shopjbs.org with free shipping with code ENDSHIP, ENDSHIP. Or get Endgame and the Great Reset Collector's issue of the New American Magazine and get free shipping plus an additional 20% off both with code END20, END20.